Hello everybody and welcome back to Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson, and today we are out in my hosta collection here in the area of my garden called Joachim's Corner, and here I have lots and lots of varieties of hostas. I absolutely love hostas, and every year I get myself a few more and the collection gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I can tell you something, I am so lucky that for some reason the deer that go around in my garden at the moment quite prolifically every morning don't seem to come into this corner of my garden here, even though it's completely open and exposed. They don't come in and nibble on my plants. So at the moment they're really looking wonderful. I have one hosta, and you'll see it when we take a look at the plants closer in a moment, that has been nibbled around the edge of some of the leaves, and I think that is probably more some kind of insect or slugs. But at the same time, I don't have much of a slug problem here in this corner either, because I have a gravelly kind of ground around here. My hostas are all in pots higher up, and around the top of all my hostas I always put a thick layer of bark, and that helps to insulate my plants during the winter, and it also seems to keep the slugs and snails away. They don't seem to like to crawl over the bark, and that is why my plants are looking so wonderful at the moment. They're not protected, as I said, in any way other than, yeah, a little bit of gravel and a little bit of bark. And another way you can protect your hostas, of course, is spraying them with something. You can make a garlic mix, boil up some garlic, put it in a litre of water and spray over your plants, because deer and all sorts of other insect and things don't like the smell of garlic. You can put cinnamon around the bottom of your plants, and there are many varieties of things that you can also buy commercially, but I would suggest just using organic things if you can, especially if you do have animals that do come around in your garden and you don't want to harm anything. My garden is a nature garden at the same time as being a collector's garden, a botanical garden, a forest area, and everything else that's going on in between. And I do like the animals coming in, but at the moment the deer have been nibbling up on most of my trees and my thuya bushes and ripping off the bark and eating them. So I've had to go around and protect them with a metal kind of protection around all of the trunks and stems and so forth. So that is a bit crazy, and that's why I think it's really interesting that they haven't come in and nibbled on this gourmet salad collection because they could quite easily do that and decimate this whole lot in just one evening. But it hasn't happened, and I've had hostas here for a few years now, and they have never come in and eaten them. And I actually took a video of a deer wandering around here once, and it stood up over here and carried on, didn't even bat an eyelid at my hostas that were here. And at that time I didn't have as many as I have now, and they were mostly against the wall. But I will try and find that little video clip so you can see what I'm talking about. So here you go, you can see one of the deer walking right past my hostas, completely ignoring them, and I hope they carry on doing that. So getting back to my hostas, nearly all of these hostas have been out in my garden like this in these plastic pots all winter long. Now I got into hostas because I don't want to have to be repotting up my pots with annual plants. I don't want plants that I have to take down to the cellar or put in the annex every year and move them around. They're very heavy. I want to be able to put them out here, leave them in place, forget about them for the winter, and then see them re-emerge every year and thicken out by themselves. And these hostas really have done a great job of it. I just had some that were in ceramic pots or smaller pots that I put inside my annex for the winter, but all of these you can see in these bigger pots, all of the ones in the smaller black pots up there, all of the ones down here, the white pots, they were out all winter. So when I take you in for a closer look, you will really be able to see how sustainable they are, how well they do in the winter. We had down to minus 14 degrees Celsius. And the only thing these plants had to protect them was bark on the top of the soil and then their pots. And I can tell you, this is a great way of having pots and containers if you don't want the fuss of annuals or switching up all the time. Lots of different varieties. and I'm sure I'm going to get more. I really would like to at some point, and I said this in another video, get a kind of layer of 3 along the edges. So now I have 2 or kind of 3, but it's lower down, and carry on this wonderful collection. And I've actually made it a little bit more enclosed this time with a little entrance, so I can sit here on my bench and sit by this little table here and enjoy all my hostas. Anyway, as I said, I was out raiding the rack and I got myself a few more plants, so we'll have a closer look at those and all the other hostas as we go around. And then I want to take you out to show you some hostas that I do actually have in the ground in different areas in my garden. Not so many, but you'll see that they've been nibbled up a lot more than the ones in the pots here. And I still want to try to experiment. So I've put some up where I have a mound of rocks and I've placed them in there where deer can't get to them, and it's also more difficult for slugs and so forth. But I've noticed that other kinds of insects have been nibbling on them anyway. And I have some hostas amongst my ferns and evergreen plants, and around them, when I pruned off my juniper bushes, I put all the prickly needles on the ground around, and there are no insects that can actually get to those plants. So we'll see how they do. They're looking a little bit not like these ones at the moment, but anyway, I really do not do much special to care for these hostas, really. They have a rough time all winter, as I said, in these plastic pots, and I haven't fertilized these at all. I don't want to fertilize them too much. I actually heard that fertilizing them too much makes them weak. It makes the leaves a little bit thinner and they grow taller and bigger, but they get weaker, and that makes them easier and more acceptable to being eaten up by different insects. So I want them to use the nutrients that are in the soil, and the bark seems to help as it seeps down nutrients into the soil around them, and that is sustaining these plants. They really don't need that much, and they are very thick and looking really good, these plants. So this seems to be working. They do hold the moisture in these pots, and the wood chip keeps the moisture in them, so I actually don't have to water them too often. When it's really, really hot, of course, in those periods, I'll come out and I'll get the hose and I'll spray them over. But I haven't now watered these plants for a couple of weeks because when I go in and test underneath, they're very moist. They seem to be happy in that situation with moisture. They can tolerate drier situations as well, but I wouldn't suggest that you let them dry out for too long. They do struggle with that. But they can tolerate drier situations. They can tolerate moist situations, but they most definitely can't tolerate any situation where they're soaking wet or sitting in water or sitting with the tray underneath full of water. They will start rotting out because they won't be able to get the oxygen they need around the roots, and well, they will just fade away. So these have no trays underneath these pots. They're directly on the ground. There are holes in the bottom of all the pots. Any excess moisture would seep directly out into the ground. And as you'll see in a moment, my plants are really, really happy. So this is all working out perfectly for them. This area, Yorkham's Corner, is on the northern backside of our crystal cottage here. So they get dappled light that comes up through the trees on the eastern side here in the mornings. Not directly on them, but just around them. And then the sun goes round and it comes round to the west on this side. And when it does, these hostas here do get some direct light in the evening. So it's just the right amount, but otherwise it's very bright here and they all do very well. Now it's said that hostas like to be in shady positions, and that's for sure, but if it's too dark, you're not going to get that much growth. They do like bright light, but in a shady or indirect manner. Direct for many hostas is detrimental, will burn them out, it will change the colour of the leaves, they'll become yellow and look kind of chlorotic kind of. But there are many varieties that can take direct light, but if you want to put hostas in direct sunlight, you need to make sure that they have acclimatized to the situation. So don't just go and buy a plant from the nursery that has been in a greenhouse or somewhere where it's been shaded and then put it in direct sunshine, because you will see that the leaves will burn or turn just yellow and the plant will start suffering. So again, this northern exposure with eastern and western sunlight that comes in at different periods of the day, and then when it's at the hottest and brightest during the middle of the day, these plants are all completely protected from that. Perfect. And yes, so during the winter, this year, when this is all over, these pots, all of them, are going to be left out here. And I won't have to move a thing. I will just be able to enjoy them and I will be able to add to my collection as I go along. Anyway, with all that said, I think it's about time now for us to go in for that closer look at all of my beautiful hostas. So, just so that you can understand the proximity of my garden and where my hosta corner is, this is Yorkim's corner, and I have a little area here where I do actually have some hostas in the ground, so we can just as well start with these. You can see in the ground a few nibbly holes in them, but they do look nice together with these begonia and all the ferns that are going on around here. Lots of different other things. So there they are. These have been here a few years. Lovely striking white colour around the edge of their leaves and the darker green inside. So that was just the first ones I wanted to show you that are out in the garden. And then you can see here my hosta corner. So we can look at all of these different hostas here and my beautiful ferns. I absolutely love ferns too. So I have a couple of ferns here. So this is the first hosta. And that has been a little bit nibbled on the leaves. This is the next one. Lovely, striking yellow colour in the middle, white, yellow, and then green on the outsides. And then look at this one as a contrast. Thick border of green and just a thin sliver of white in the middle of the leaf. That is just beautiful. And then we go on to this one. Very wrinkly leaves. Lime and dark green, wrinkly edges. Quite an interesting hosta. Then this little one coming up here. This is one of the blue tonations. Lots of small leaves still coming out. At the moment it is still only early June, and here the hostas come out much later than many other places. Even in southern Sweden, we are in southern Sweden, but I mean lower down than us, just an hour and 40 minutes drive away, the hostas were out fully 2 weeks before our hostas here, because we have much colder nights for a much longer period, and it's the night temperature, not the daylight and temperature, that affects them the most. So now that the nights are getting warmer, they are emerging more and more. Look at this beautiful one. It has this kind of bluey green colour in the middle, and then this absolutely gorgeous pastel yellow colour around the edge. Oh, I do love that. And just before I carry on, I really do want you to have a little look around my garden. We're looking over into the botanical garden here, and here I have all my rhododendrons, beautifully in flower, as a lovely backdrop to these hostas here. So another one here that's kind of a lime greeny yellow colour around the edge, and then this green colour in the middle. This one's absolutely beautiful too. And this one is the one that's been nibbled around the edge of the leaves. So look here, there, and the ones down there. And this is the only plant that's been nibbled like that. So something must have been here one evening and managed to get all of that. But other than that, the plant is still looking so amazing in this pot. Then we have this one next to it here. This one has longer leaves, deep veining, a yellowy greeny colour, plain coloured but absolutely beautiful. And it's amazing, there are so many different shapes on the leaves of these hostas. If I should just pull up a little bit like this, you can see that. So we go on in here, and then there's another one here, a little bit more rounded or heart-shaped leaves, and look at the variegation in this leaf. It's quite understandable, isn't it, that once you get a hosta or a couple of hostas, you can get hooked on them because there's just so many different varieties to behold. And you just want to have them all. Or at least I do. Look at this lovely one here. This is one of the ones I bought while I was out raiding the rack. And has these kind of wavy edges to the leaves that are a yellow colour around the edge and the green in the middle, but wavy, so that's quite interesting. Looks like they're going to get quite big. And then while we're here, we can have a look from above. And then we can go down to this beautiful miniature one down here. Look at those popping out all over the place in this pot. And they're a blue colour, and they stay miniature. These leaves, just so you can see how small they are, look at this compared to my hand. Look at this plant. The leaves are really beautiful and small. And then next we have this beautiful one. Another greeny, limey kind of colour. Lovely leaves. They're probably going to get much bigger than this. And there are a lot more leaves coming up. This is just the beginning of my hosta season here. And then look at this gorgeous coloured one here. Now this one, I had it in this pot that was growing ivy as well. So I decided to leave the ivy and let it grow, and they're doing so wonderfully together. Look at this leaf. Absolutely gorgeous. And another fern by the side here. So if I back up a bit here, you can see that's all my hostas on this side. And the backdrop here, you can see out to our Silver Way part of the garden. So this is an extra parking space as well. And then all of Yorkim's Corner, my backdrop. So if I just sit here for a minute on my bench, you can see the view I have in front of me. And how when I look round to the side, I get to see all these beautiful hostas. Little table to put a drink or something on. And then all of this greenery around. And then into the botanical garden, my wonderful pot there. And all of my rhododendrons that are in bloom. Absolutely gorgeous. So seeing as I'm sitting here, I'll carry on now down here. This is a beautiful and very different kind of hosta. This is hosta white feather, and it is completely white, not variegated. It still has the lovely veining in the leaves, but completely white. Isn't that just amazing? So I'll see how this grows out and fills out this pot. Just amazing. And then behind that I have this lovely big example. Now I need to stand up so you can see from above. But look at this beautiful example here. Again, this lovely lime and green colour. And this one is getting quite big leaves. If I should just show you with my hand, you can get some, there you go, perspective of how big they're getting. Absolutely gorgeous. Oh, I do love this. And then another blue hosta here with a little fly that's decided to grace this leaf with its presence in the middle of my video. And that's fine, doesn't do any harm. Lovely, lovely blue colour. And these two are getting pretty big. Look at this leaf. So they're going to be really big and beautiful. Almost completely perfect. And then I have this little guy down here with a thicker green middle and a very thin white margin. And pointy leaves. Really nice. And then this little guy here that's a kind of bluey greeny colour. They're also very gorgeous. streaks of green in the blue. That's quite different. I'm looking forward to when this gets bigger. And then another big one behind here. Look at these leaves and their variegation. Absolutely gorgeous. Look, this leaf is already getting pretty big. Oh, lovely, 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 lovely. Look at them when you see a blue and a variegated together. And the same on this side. Really wonderful. So now we go back down. We have this one here. This is one of the ones that I just bought while I was out raiding the rack. Slightly thicker white margin and yellow white around the edges. Really like that. And shiny leaves, shiny texture. And then I have this lovely one down here that's flowering. Look at the leaf on the left side here. Look at that patterning on that. That is just gorgeous. And then the flower coming out. Look how gorgeous that is. Purple flowers it's going to have, I can see. So I forgot to mention the ones that I bought while I was out raiding the rack. So if I go back to this Hosta White Feather quickly, I bought this in a plastic bag with a little bit of soil around, and it was starting to grow out in the bag, and that method does work. So you can purchase Hosta online and have them shipped to you, bare root basically, or I have bought some Hostas that have been bare root sent to me, so that works as well as going out and buying them already in pots. This one I also got while I was out raiding the rack this time. And now we're down to this lovely little blue one. Instead of roundy leaves with the blue, it's more pointy. Just gorgeous. Look at that. Absolutely perfect. Wonderful. And then this one next to it. It looks quite the same, but it's different. It's got a different kind of texture. And the leaves look like they're going to be a different shape. They're going to be a little bit thicker and not as pointy on the end. This one I've noticed has been a little bit nibbled. I think it's harder for the smaller plants as they're establishing and growing out to not get nibbled a little bit and it to be noticeable because they don't have as many leaves. But later on, when they get taller and there are more leaves, then they won't get nibbled as easily. So now, this is another plant that I bought while I was out raiding the rack this time, and look at the beautiful flowers on it already. Purple flowers, and it has leaves growing up on the top of the stem just before where the flowers come out. That is also very interesting. These are again shiny leaves, a lovely dark green. Look at those. Beautiful dark green. Another flower coming out down here. I'm going to go around the back here now. Have a little look. So there we go. Those flowers are gorgeous. The leaves are gorgeous. Lovely plant. And then I have this one, which is absolutely gorgeous and very different as well. The leaves are kind of swirly, thick green margin, white center, and they come up swirly as well. Look at this. They swirl as they come up. So this is still just coming up now. So I can't wait for more leaves to emerge and for this to thicken out and look gorgeous with time. So this is another plant that I bought while I was out raiding the rack. This time it was already in a pot and it has since grown out a lot more leaves and got much bigger already. There we go. Lovely margins. Look at this leaf. Really gorgeous. Again, that yellow or chartreuse or lime coloured edging, also sometimes getting white, as you can see down there. White, grey, light and dark greens, lots of different colours going on. So this is this side of my hosta collection, and then there's the other side. And it wouldn't be complete if I didn't have a couple of my crystals with me out here, my crystal skulls, clear quartz crystal and cloudy quartz crystal. And here I have an ivy on the table in the middle of the whole lot, and I'm happy that I have the ivy here as well, because if I plant any ivy out in my garden, the deer eat everything. So these are actually precious examples that I have in the middle of my hostas here, where they don't get eaten. So again, this is this corner. This is the view up behind of all the different plants that I have going on at the moment. And to show you the proximity from the other side, hosta corner here, my pot here, and then this is the botanical garden view with all my beautiful plants and trees coming out, absolutely gorgeous. And then along the edge, all the rhododendrons. And this is just to give you some perspective of where I am in the garden with my hosta collection. So all the rhododendrons, we go back round, and then you can see my view of my hostas here. So I am just so pleased about this. God, those flowers in the distance there behind. I am just so happy at the moment. So I did say I wanted to show you a couple of hosta that I planted out in the garden here. So we'll have a look here. If you look down here amongst all my ferns and evergreens, you can see my Hosta Empress Wu. And this one's doing quite okay. You can just see very few nibble marks in the leaves. Then we'll go over past these huge ferns here. And hiding down in here, you'll see my other Hosta Empress Wu. Also kind of okay, but this one has a little bit more nibbling, as you can see down here. And I noticed when this one was emerging that it was struggling to come out. So you can see a little bit of burn. This is also from the sun that comes around here early in the day. That has burnt it a little bit before the ferns grew up around it. But apart from that, this hosta's doing okay too, and can get pretty big. So this is okay here for now, but I might have to move it at some point somewhere else. But I'm enjoying them here. As you can see in this jungle, they're absolutely perfect there and there. So if I can get back a little bit, you might be able to see both of them in the picture together. Yes, you can. There you go. So that's my Hosta Empress Wu out in the garden. So now I want to race round to Silver Way, because look at this beautiful tree at the same time. Oh, gorgeous. I just want to race around to Silver Way to show you some hostas that I've planted out where I have a pile of rocks that were piled up when we had our water fixed here. This is also the Garden of New Beginnings, and a few beautiful rhododendrons coming up. So here, this is Silver Way, and if you look in this border here, right up there in the back amongst these rocks, I've planted out some hostas. Look at those. And they're actually doing okay. They've been nibbled a little bit, but they're basically doing quite okay. So let's get closer. Yeah. So there's these ones here, not too bad, but then you'll see these ones that have been nibbled quite a little bit more on the leaves. The ones at the back there, these ones here. But as I said, the more they thicken out and grow, the more leaves there'll be, so there'll be less damage. It's always a lot more damage in the beginning when there are a few leaves, because you see the damage on everything. But as this all thickens out more and more, I'll try and get more and more plants in here. It should get better and better, and they really do seem to like it in amongst all these rocks here anyway, elevated from everything else. So that's those hostas too. And now back to Joachim's Corner and my hosta collection. Once again, just to show the view of when I'm sitting here. Look at that. That's an amazing view, isn't it? So calming, so beautiful. The birds are singing. The hostas look gorgeous. Ah, wonderful. Well, now you have seen all of the hostas that I have here at the moment, and I do actually have a few hostas at my apartment that I don't actually have in my collection here. So when they get a bit bigger, I'll need to split those, so I have some here and some at my apartment. But well, you've got to see how well these plants do in pots, how well they do out in the landscape. And again, the suggestion is if you're putting them in the landscape, try and really put them in places where they are surrounded with other plants that deer or rabbit or other animals don't like to eat or don't like to crawl over, different materials, to keep them as clear and beautiful and unbitten and scathed along the edges as possible. So I am really enjoying this moment, because during the season these will probably get nibbled on a little bit more, and I actually accept that, and I enjoy my hostas however they look, as long as they're not completely mangled. Then I can't enjoy looking at them, right? But if I have the leaves just like the one that was a little bit nibbled there, or if they have a few holes, it's actually okay, and it's a part of how the plants are in our gardens. But if I had all of these in the ground now, they would be completely nibbled down. I tried that with my Empress Wu a year ago and thought it was going to be wonderful, but they were where the ground was just the soil, very moist, and we had a lot of rain, and we have so many slugs here that they just nibbled them down to near enough nothing. So it didn't work. But if that ever happens to you, you don't have to worry. These plants are extremely resilient. As long as you have the root ball, you can move the root ball to a pot or somewhere else, and that will come up next season if it doesn't start trying to come up the same season. So you never have to worry about that. You're just going to have to skip a season, and then you'll get to see your plants again the next season. And that's what I've learned. I've moved my Empress Wu round 3 times now, from that border I was talking about just before to a pot here, and then decided to put it back in the landscape and see how that will work out. And if it doesn't, then I can bring it back into a pot here. That is one of the biggest hostas you can find out there, and really can be beautiful and enormous with time. A thing that I found with hostas though, if you're going to be splitting hostas, if it's a large and mature plant, you will split it and it will be fine. You will get the same size plant growing out the next season. But if you do split them into very small pieces, then they will kind of revert and maybe get a little bit smaller the year after, and then they will take some time to be able to bush out again. So if you really want to get these big plants with long petioles and big leaves, you should leave them alone and then let them fill out to a decent size before you start splitting. But if you're impatient and you want to, then expect smaller plants for a longer time, but it's still okay. And you can go and dig up these plants from your garden any time in the season as long as it's not frost. In the summer, while they're up like this, I could lift this bundle here, split that into different pots, and they will not pout, they will not hang or anything like that. The leaves will stay beautiful. And of course you can do it early spring before they start coming up, or when they start popping up. You can go and split them easily. So they're very easy plants to divide. You can also get plants from seeds. If you have the time and patience for them to come up, then you can do that. I'm not sure if you're going to get exactly the same plant or if you get mixtures or whatever, but you can do it from seed as well. And they do have different colors. Most of them are tones of pastely purple, but you can also get white flowers. You get some that are fragrant and some that aren't. So there's a little something for everybody. And I'm looking forward to getting so many more. So anyway, thank you very much for sticking around and enjoying this beautiful Hosta collection with me, because it's just become one of my passions of plants that I like to collect. Well, among many. As you could see before, I have many different coloured rhododendrons as well. I love those. I will keep collecting lots of rhododendrons until they explode in my garden and there's no space for anything else. No, but here we have longer, colder seasons, so it's really nice with evergreen plants that give us a boost of colour as well during the spring, summer season. And all of these will have flowers in the late summer season as well. Usually July, August time, most of them start flowering. Some can be early like this one, but they all do flower. So anyway, all I have to say now is thank you very much once again for watching Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. Please remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when my next video will be coming up, and I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.